Shalom and welcome to Yeshiva B'nai Noach. I'm Tom Averna as we continue with our beginning biblical Hebrew course. Moving into chapter 9, dealing with word pairs, singular, and this will be the review of that chapter. Starting as always with the oral review, and this time we get a fun conversation between Sue and Lou and their exploits. So beginning with line number 1. Su vilu yashvu babayit, v'ha'av lo haya babayit. Line 2. U babayit haya lechem asher asa ha'av. Line 3. Ra'u su vilu et halechem behem zachru et asher amar ha'av. Line 4. Hu amar asiti et halechem lamelech. Line 5. Lo asiti et halechem lesu vilu. Su ra'ata et halechem, vilu ra'a et su. Line 7. Lu amar lo su halechem haya lamelech, vilo haya halechem levein ulvat. Line 8. Su ra'ata et halechem, v'hi lacha et halechem. Line 9. Lu amar lo. Line 10. Su achla min halechem. Line 11. Su amra Line 12. Lu amar ha'av amar lo su. Line 13. Su achla et halechem ad asher lo haya lechem. Line 14. Hi amra mph. Line 15. Amar lu masu ma amart. Line 16. Amra su ach. Vesu haita chola. Line 17. Ha'av halach el habayit, vihu amar el su. Line 18. Asiti et halechem lemelech, viat achalt et halechem, viat hayit chola. Line 19. Lo v'ha'av halchu el ha'ir v'hem achlu im hamelech. Line 20. Yashva su babayit, v'hi haita chola. Okay, let's take a look at our vocab list for Chapter 9. Adon, Adonim, Lord or Master, masculine. Adam, Adam, person, mankind, masculine. Gam, also. Yad, Yadayim, hand, feminine, so notice it is irregular, but generally body parts, especially dual body parts, are feminine, but they have the dual ending. Next is yada, or to know, yada. Ki, that or because. Ki, that or because. All, every, the whole is kol, kol, kol. Notice this is the short kamats. Kol or kol, same pronunciation. All, every, the whole. Al yad, near or next to. Al yad. So literally on hand or upon hand. So near or next to, al yad. Lev, levav, heart, masculine. These are both the different spellings, but it is the same word, lev, levav. You can see it in both forms. Me, who, me, who, or who, me. Moshe, Moses. And our second verb for this chapter, Allah, Allah, go up or ascend. Allah. Rosh or Rashim. Rosh or Rashim. Head, top, or leader. That is masculine. Shalom. Peace or completeness. Masculine. Shalom. Everything to do with your goodwill. Shalom. And shame and shemot, name. Masculine. Shame, shemot. Not to be confused with sham, which means there. So just notice the difference in the voweling here with the tsere. Shame, shemot, again irregular in that it is masculine, but in the plural it has a feminine ending. But shame, shemot, masculine. And another idiom, as was al yad, hachol, hachol, the all, literally, but it means everything, everything. Hachol, everything. Let's begin now looking at the Hebrew word pairs. Also in many other textbooks, you'll see them referred to, and in English, referred to as construct nouns, or nouns in the construct state. But here in the book, they're called Hebrew word pairs. So a noun, of course, getting back to basic grammar, a noun can be used to describe another noun. And this is true in both English and Hebrew. In English, the word of is often used when two nouns are joined in this way. So you have a king, or you have a king of peace, a man of war. The of peace describes the king. It's a king who is one of peace, a man who is one of war. Okay, so those are adjectives essentially, but using the phrase of peace, a king of peace. When a Hebrew noun is used to describe another noun, two nouns are usually joined without adding a word between them. This is important to remember. If you see two nouns together, if there's anything between them, then it's not in the construct state. But just the two nouns together, they might be in a construct or in a word pair form. So we'll call the two nouns joined in this way a word pair. The first word of a word pair should be translated with of following it. And some examples of word pairs that you'll find: Davar Melech. Davar Melech. Okay. A word of a king. Okay. Notice there's no definiteness on Melech, so there's no definiteness on word. So a word of a king. Bat Melech, a daughter of a king. Melech Shalom, a king of peace. Ish Milchama, a man of war. Here's where it gets a little tricky. Some words don't change when they appear as the first word of a word pair, which is going to give you a clue that some words do change. We'll look at those next, but some of the words here given, Melech, for instance, would stay the same, Melech Shalom. So there's no way to tell for sure that this is a word pair, other than looking at the fact that there's two nouns together, nothing between them, and then looking at it in context. You would recognize this as a word pair, Melech Shalom, a king of peace. Ish Milchama, a man of war. So now some examples of words that do change as the first word of a word pair. And please note, first word of a word pair is very significant. That's the main word that you would be using. We'll talk about that. But at any rate, this is in the first word position. Sometimes the words change. Generally, just the voweling is what's going to change. So as I've said before, if you can recognize the noun without the vowel, it's still, you'll still know the word, even though the vowels change. But this gives you a hint that the first word is part of a word pair, if you recognize that. So Bayit, a house, becomes Beit. Avadim, Beit Avadim, a house of slaves. So interestingly, or it may be helpful if you're familiar at all with Hebrew, especially in form of words or things that you've read and that have a Jewish connotation. Then the word pair form becomes actually more familiar to you than the original form. So, for instance, Bayit, most of us would recognize Beit as home, Beit Shalom, Beit, many synagogues are named Beits. Beit Knesset. This becomes a little more familiar actually than the original form, Bayit. But at any rate, this is the word pair form. The Patak changes to a Tsere. So you have Bayit and Beits. Beits, Avadim, a house of slaves. Davar becomes Divar, Melech, a word of a king. Sadeh becomes Sadeh, Milchama, a field of war. So just recognize that those changes are in the voweling, but the consonants are going to stay the same. But that gives you the clue that this is the first word of a word pair. Only the first word is going to have that change to it. As you will often see, words that end in hey will also have a change, and that is true of being in a word pair relationship here. So if you have a word that ends in hey, the hey changes to a tav, and also there may be vowel changes as well. So behema becomes behamat, behamat as the first word of a word pair. Behamat, sadeh, a beast of a field. Again, notice all the examples they're giving you here, they are not definite, and there's a reason. We'll be talking about that in just a minute. But these are all indefinite word pairs. Family, mishpacha, becomes mishpachat achim, a family of brothers. Isha, Isha becomes eshes, eshet, or Ashkenazic eshes chayil, a woman of valor. Eshet ish, a wife of a man. So the last word of a word pair remains unchanged, but the first word can have changes to it in the voweling, or in some cases, consonantal changes as well. As I've said before, don't get too overwhelmed with these vowel changes. If you can recognize the root consonants, then that's the main thing. And then the vowel changes, recognizing them are important, but more important is recognizing the root and the consonants that are involved in it, because those vowel changes will happen. But if you're solid with your roots, it'll give you a head start on recognizing the word, even if the voweling seems different to you. Note also that in page 73 of your textbook, they give you the nouns, all of the nouns that you've learned so far. They give you their regular form and their word pair form. So if there's no change in their normal forms. And as before, I recommend that you focus on the irregular forms, which are also on that same page. So if you focus on the irregular forms, that's the main thing, because the others aren't going to change. You'll easily recognize them. But focus on the irregulars, and as you're studying, that's what you want to spend a little more time with. Oftentimes you'll see a makef. You'll see a word pair form with a dash after the word. However, this textbook does not use makefs, so you won't see this here. But if you're reading Torah, if you're reading scripture, oftentimes, or most likely, you will see a makef that will tell you that you have a word pair, or a construct form. So that's another hint that you'll find. Okay. Words ending with hey and vowel changes in the word pair form, which we just talked about. So you have Isha becomes Eshet, Eshet. Behema becomes Behemat. Mishpacha becomes Mishpachat. So again, that Tav takes the place of the hey ending. So another note from your book, these words can be found and you can study them in the glossary, and also check out notes that will appear in the back of your book. You'll find spelling charts for verbs and nouns given in this book, as well as a glossary. And as I mentioned before, the word pair forms for all nouns using the makef above are given in the glossary, but the textbook doesn't always show the makef. All right. So make sure you spend some time in the back of the book. Become familiar with where the glossary is, where the notes are, and be looking for those little tiny numbers that you'll see in the chapter pages, which refers you to a note. And many times those notes can and are very important to be aware of. So now let's talk about what happens when we have a definite word pair. The first word of a Hebrew word pair never appears in a definite form. So you're not going to see the letter hey attached to the beginning of the first word of a word pair. So how will you know if it's definite? You look to the second word, or the last word at any rate, because there can be more than two. But you look for the second word of a word pair and see if it is definite or indefinite. When it is definite, when the second word of a word pair is indefinite, the entire word pair is indefinite. So obviously the opposite is going to be true. So the example here of indefinite word pairs, which we've already been seeing: Ish, Milchama, a man of war; Ben Melech, a son of a king. Let's take a look at. So the second word of a word pair, if it is definite, the entire word pair is definite. So you have to pay attention in a word pair because it can be confusing. You have to look at the context as well. But if you have a word pair, you want to look at the nouns. If you have more than two nouns strung together, then look for whatever the last of that string of nouns is and see if it has the hey in front of it, making it definite, or if it is a definite noun in and of itself, a proper noun. All right, so the example they give here is Adon Hakol, the master of everything, but the master. So you do have to add the in front of the first word, even though the ha doesn't appear there. Okay. Eretz ha'am, the land of the people. Ben Hamelech, the son of the king. And of course, names, proper nouns, are always definite. So you don't have to have the hey in front of either one of them if the last word is a proper noun. Eshet Avraham, the wife of Abraham; Melech Mitzrayim, the king of Egypt; Bat David, the daughter of David. Okay. So if you wanted to say a daughter of David, you would add Lamed to David. So just be aware that it is possible you would have Bat David and referring to not the daughter, but a daughter, if you have a Lamed in front of the David. Okay? Just remember that, or make note of that at any rate. So by way of review, and this is not in your book, but I think it's a nice chart to keep in mind that a noun is considered definite in 3 circumstances. Okay? If it has the definite article, ha melcha, if it has the definite article in the last word of the word pair, or if it has a pronomial suffix, which we haven't talked about yet, but just be aware that that is another thing that makes the whole string definite. So Avi is my father. Avi is my father. So this would be Beit Avi would be the house of my father. Again, my father is a definite noun. Or if it is a proper noun, such as Shemuel, Samuel. So Eved Shemuel, the servant of Samuel. Back to your book now. Word pair forms can be used anywhere a noun would be used. It can be the subject, it can be the object of a sentence, it can be adjectives, anything that a noun can be used as. Now, when word pairs are used as the subject of a sentence, the verb must agree with the first word. Again, that first word becomes very important in a word pair for all kinds of reasons. But one of them is that this is what your verb has to match. The first word, none of the other words, just the first word. So Ben Hamelech is definite because you have the definite article here. So this is the son of the king. Halach, walked. So halach is in the third person because Ben is the third person. The son, he walked. Bat Hamelech halcha, the daughter of the king walked. Halcha matches bat, feminine. Achi Hamelachim halach. Achi Hamelachim halach. This is singular. Even though kings is plural, the verb matches the first word in the word pair. When word pairs are used as the object of a sentence, the entire word pair must be preceded by et. If the word pair is definite, only if it's definite. But that gives you a clue that you have that what follows et, if you have a string of nouns following et, then you have a word pair. So at any rate, Hu ra'ah ben melech, he saw a son of a king. You don't put an et in front of an indefinite object, only in front of a definite one. So Hu ra'ah et ben hamelech, he saw the son of the king. Hu ra'ah et ben David, he saw the son of David. Again, we have definite objects have to be preceded by the word et, the definite or direct object marker. Okay? And as we've been talking about word pair strings, there can be more than 2 nouns that are joined together. In a simple word pair strings, the last word remains unchanged. All the other words in the string appear as they do when they are the first word of a word pair. They should be translated with the word of following them. When the last word of a word pair string is definite, the entire string is definite. So just be aware, again, there can be changes. So this devar, eshet melech, a word of a wife of a king. Devar, eshet hamelech, the word of the wife, of the king, because this last word in the word pair string is definite. Devar Eshet Melech Moav, the word of the wife of the king of Moab. So again, because you have a proper noun in the last position, everything else has to have the in front of it. Okay? The wife of the, or the word of the wife of the king of Moab. So of goes between each word, and the goes between each word or with each word. So a lot of, this seems daunting at first, and just to encourage you or to help you get past any fears that you have at this point, you'll have lots of opportunities to practice this in the exercises where you know what you're looking for. And the more familiar you get with it, the easier it will be to recognize it. Don't get too strung out here in terms of word pair strings. See what I did there? A little bit of, never mind. But be aware that when you see nouns that are strung together, that can be a word pair or a word pair string. Just be aware of that and be available to understand it. And as I said, so in this chapter and in the next few chapters, you're going to be getting lots of exercises that you will definitely know you're dealing with word pairs, because that's the whole point of the exercise. So that'll help. You'll get familiar with it. Don't get too concerned about it. All right. Just be aware of these changes in the vowels that can happen. The last word of a word pair doesn't change, but all of the other words in the word pair could change voweling or possibly consonants in that context. So now some other side notes from your book. The difference between Shema et and Shema Bakol. The verb Shema, to hear, usually is followed by a direct object, so it's going to have the word et after it. You always have to hear something, so there's going to be a direct object that's associated with that verb. What did he hear? What did she hear? So if there's a definite direct object following that, then you remember you'll have the et in front of it. So hu shama et kol Avraham. He heard. What did he hear? Well, that's going to be an object. He heard the voice of Abraham. Okay, so that kol Avraham is your word pair string. That is the object preceded by the word et. However, when Shema is followed by bakol, it means to listen to hearken to the voice of. And I put this in the vocab list this way so you can learn Shema bakol together as something that means obey or hearken to the voice of, but obey is probably more often used in English to translate it. Okay, so listen to or hearken to the voice of, which implies obedience or to obey. So, hu shama bakol Abraham, he listened to the voice of Abraham. So there's no to here. So that's what they're trying to tell you, is that you want to translate shama bakol as listened to, rather than wouldn't be heard. I mean, literally, you're looking at this and you're saying, he heard in the voice of, he heard in, and that doesn't make sense. So Shema, remember, can be translated as heard or listened to the voice of Abraham. Or you can translate this as, He obeyed. He obeyed the voice of Abraham. He obeyed Abraham. Would be the shorter way to say that. All right, another definite word per idiom. The idiom Bederek Yerushalayim means on the road to Jerusalem, and this would be similar to be used in any other place name. So Bederek Yerushalayim, on the road to Jerusalem, or Hu halach Bederek Moab, he went on the road to Moab. And it sort of makes sense, because b is on anyway. I mean, that's what in or on is what the bet in front would mean. The only thing that might get a little confusing is recognizing this as a word pair, meaning that you have to add the, even though your voweling doesn't show you that. You have to add the in front. So on the road to Moab. And so again, you're adding the word to, because that's what this is telling you. You're also adding the, because this is a word pair and Moab is a proper noun. So by way of review, and this is not in your book, but there is up on Google Docs, you'll find a document that will give you this information again. So just by way of review, the rules of word pairs or construct absolutes, two or more nouns together. The first word may change vowels or letters, and that's true of any of the words in a word pair except the last one. The first word or any other words except the last one may change vowels or letters. So for instance, the hey might change to a tav if it's a singular noun. The last word always remains unchanged. The first word or any other words in the word pair never has the definite marker hey. If the second or last word of a word pair has a definite marker, all are definite. Word pairs can be anything a noun can be. If it's a subject, the verb has to agree with the first word. If it's an object and definite, it has to be preceded by et. Some other additional notes: while the word pair is usually joined by the English word of in translation, occasionally for, with, or in can be used. Adjectives, and this is another thing that could throw you, but just be aware. Adjectives must follow word pairs and not interrupt them. So if you want to say the good king of the land, it would be Melech Haaretz Hatov. Hatov is the adjective for Melech, but you can't interrupt this word pair. So it goes at the end. Or it could be Melech Haaretz Hatova, the king of the good land. So in this case, it's easy to tell because Eretz is feminine, this is feminine, so the adjective has to match this. In this case, king is masculine, this is masculine, so it has to match this. So if these two words are different in either singular or masculine feminine form, that becomes easy. It's a little difficult when they're both the same gender or the same number. But again, it's just looking at context and trying to make sense of it. All right, ambiguous adjectives translated in context, and that's all that means, is that if this adjective matches both words, you just have to kind of Make sense of the context of it. The first word of a string is called construct. The last word is absolute in other texts, not in this one. This is the Hebrew equivalent of a genitive or possessive case. You don't have all of the cases in Hebrew that you do in some other languages. Although a construct word, first word in a string, may not take the definite article, it may take an inseparable preposition, but that preposition, as we saw in one of the previous examples, will have the Yeshiva under it, whereas if it were not in a word string, that Yeshiva would change to a vowel if it were part of a definite noun construction. So be aware that that inseparable preposition will be attached to the first word, but it won't look like it's definite. But if the last word of a word string is definite, the whole string is definite, regardless of the voweling that you might see in the inseparable preposition. And I throw this in here, but we're going to be looking at it in more detail in the next chapter. But plural changes are simpler to identify. The im changes to a. Actually, that should be a tsere. And the ot stays the same. But at any rate, the best way to identify is to look for two or more nouns grouped together, check your context. Nothing can come between the nouns in a construct relationship. No prepositions, no conjunctions can come between them. If either of the nouns is modified by an adjective, the adjective is placed last so as not to separate the nouns. And again, as we talked about, it can make it difficult. You have to look at the context or note whether it agrees in gender and number to one of the nouns in the form, in the construct form. Okay, so it's just context, context, context. If it's not given to you, it won't be struggling that much in the examples that we're going to be doing early on. So don't worry too much about that, but just be aware. So one more note with some examples of ambiguity. So this sentence, Devar HaMelech HaTov, could be the good word of the king, or it could be the word of the good king. Look at the context. Eved HaNavi Hara could mean this evil servant, Hara, Eved, of the prophet, or it could be the servant of the evil prophet. Again, looking at context will most likely give you that information. All right, so that concludes chapter 9, this singular review. I just want to once again encourage you as you approach any new information in the book. It will seem overwhelming at first. Just relax, breathe through it, because you're going to get lots of exercises now to practice what you just learned. So please take the time to do all of the exercises, even though in our next video we'll be looking at the exercises, but we'll be primarily just working on reading. But going beyond that on your own, which is why you really have to have the textbook, it's really important to do all of the exercises and to spend the time with it. Practice, practice, practice. I've said before, that's how you get to Carnegie Hall, and that's how you get to learn Hebrew. You've got to practice over and over and over again so that it becomes more and more familiar. The more you practice, the more you say, oh, I recognize that now. And don't get too worried about the fact that that you're not getting it right away. For some people, it's harder than for others, and there's nothing wrong with that. As I've said before, usually, or in many cases, the person that struggles the most with learning the language, learning anything, is the one who's going to grasp it the best. So encourage yourself if you're struggling. Wow, that means you're going to be awesome at this. So be happy to be struggling. But if you're not struggling and you're still getting it, be happy about that too. So at any rate, that's our look at word pair singular. We'll look at, of course, the exercises next in the next chapter 10. We'll be looking at word pairs in the plural form. But just remember the rule sheet that I have should be available to you up on Google Docs, so you can review that. Use a Quizlet to practice your vocab, including looking at word pair forms so you can recognize them easily. Otherwise, that's a look at Chapter 9. And thank you for joining me. We'll be back with a look at exercises in our next video. Otherwise, thanks for being a part of what we're doing here at Yeshiva B'nai Noach. I'm Tom Averna. Shalom.